This is an Eye on Annapolis bonus podcast.
We are up here sort of adjacent to KB Ace Hardware. We are with a guy that I'm presently going to call Jared Littmann, but in about 2 weeks, I'm going to call him Mayor-Elect Littmann.
Well, thank you, John. It's an honor to be with you. I appreciate your interest in talking with me.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, congratulations on a long and successful campaign.
Thank you. It felt long.
Yeah, well, it's about half as long as your first term will be.
Right. Right.
But we wanted to stop in and really sort of have just an open discussion and see, what we've got. I mean, see if you perhaps want to give it back. And now that you've got it, well, maybe I'm having second thoughts or buyer's remorse, and not really. But I guess one of the things that comes to mind, and you just mentioned that you just had lunch with Bob O'Shea, who was your opponent over at Chicken Ruth's on Main Street. What's your sandwich?
So the 125 crab and cheese omelet is on the menu as the Alderman Jared Littmann. And I enjoyed that, and I ordered that. I did speak to Spencer, and I mentioned that's what I was ordering. And said, we'll have to do a name change of that next time we do a menu update.
So with a little cross and a little exit out, right, and put Mayor on top of that.
Exactly.
I guess the other thing I want to ask is, are you prepared for Eric Smith to roast you in editorial cartoons in the Capitol?
Prepared in that I know it's coming. Emotionally prepared, that'll be seen.
We'll see what we get into to find out how that goes.
Yes.
It's funny, as you've gone through, I mean, you've spent 2 years talking to people, and that was the gist of your campaign. It was, and I'll screw it up, but it's,
Listen Unite too.
Okay. You've been doing an awful lot of listening and stuff like that. Now, you've heard the voters. The voters obviously have spoken. They've elected you as the next mayor of Annapolis. What promises do you think, or what things do you think that the voters most wanted to see now that you've gone through the election? Everything's been tallied.
Well, one thing I'm very proud of for the election and the results and the campaign is that I feel like I honestly stayed true to what my beliefs are. I never promised something I didn't think I could deliver or wanted to deliver on. And the things I talked about the most and that I was getting the most engagement with and continued on, things like people want to see the city dock project get done. No matter what side you're on, I don't know that anyone wanted to not worry about the rising tides and the stormwater issues and getting it out. So people want to see the city dock get done. People want to see affordability issues being addressed. And so that's not just housing, although housing is a part of it, but life is hard, life is expensive. And a lot of the issues I've been talking about is making the city at least less expensive to do business with. So whether we're talking about parking, trying to eliminate the penalties when you're in a garage where the company already has your credit card information and license plate number, let's just charge you for the amount of time that you've actually been parked as opposed to penalizing you for not prepaying enough. In terms of working with city government, when I would talk about my plans for permitting, I would get a lot of interest and excitement around those ideas. And these are probably boring in the grand scope of how we live our lives, but when you're trying to do a project and the contractor is charging you thousands of dollars more because they don't want to do business in Annapolis, if I could make permitting easier to do business with, I think that's going to be important to people.
You brought that up, and I can't not forget the article in the Capitol about Lisa Consiglio-Ryan and the race at Juice Shop.
Yep.
And apparently there is one plumber that will put in grease traps in the city of Annapolis. And I mean, you're a sole source. I mean, how much is it going to cost? What's in your wallet?
I was at an affordable housing symposium just a few weeks ago, and Jake Day, our secretary for housing for the state, was talking about bad process being 2/3 the cost of housing. So think of that. If you're talking about a $600,000 house, only costs $200,000 to actually build it, the sticks and the shingles and everything else. If we could cut the process piece down to, and his example was 2/3 for bad process, it only costs 1/3 if you have good process. We could take out tens of thousands, possibly even hundreds of $1,000s in the cost of doing things. I think that's a much better return on the investment that residents would appreciate for their tax dollars.
Well, certainly. I would certainly think there. Moving into, you've got a new council coming in, a mostly new council.
4 and 4. 4 returning and 4 new.
Right. And, Rob Savage is now the senior member of the council.
Yep.
And you are for the, I now this will be going into the next 4 years as an all-Democratic council. I don't think Gavin had an all-Democratic council his first year. I think Fred was still in there.
That's correct. Farmer won the 2021 election.
We've heard criticisms that, everything's rubber stamped with Gavin. Okay, they're all Democrats, they're all going to vote the same way. I mean, you're going to hear the same thing if it was all Republicans as well. So I'm not naive enough to think that. But do you think it's a negative to have a supermajority on the council?
So I'm going to push back on both sides of your question, if you don't mind. One, I didn't have the sense that this past council was a rubber stamp for Gavin. You look at the past 6 months of council meetings, they were extremely contentious. He didn't get everything that he wanted. Some things did fail, and there were some split votes. The other part I'll push back on is once you're on the council, and I was for 5 years, and when I was on the council initially, there was a 8-1 Democratic majority, and then when Panelides won, there was a 7-2 majority Democrats. Once you're on the council, we're not having discussions about supporting each other because we're the same party or opposing people because they're a different party. There were those discussions that I experienced and I see this council, it was very much aligned to just what their beliefs were. And there were different core groups and different configurations of council members who were behind, say, housing issues versus parking issues versus short-term rentals. They were different alignments, and certainly cliques is the wrong word, but different the groups. And sometimes they were very much opposed on one issue, and those same individuals are very much together on a different issue. Okay,
that's fair. That's fair. I mean, I think that to a degree, I think once the election happens, do you feel just sort of fold away?
I think that's right. It really does feel that way.
No, and I mean, I appreciate, although I don't particularly agree with my alderman at all times with Rob, but I do appreciate that he does seem to go in with the interest of the ward, right, and goes to battle for that as well.
I think that's right. Is that people, for the most part, do try to advance issues for what they think is important to their ward. There's some people who have bigger global issues that they're trying to promote, and some that are more territorial over their ward. But it is just about those issues and their beliefs and their core values rather than anything to do with party alignment.
Well, one of the things I've always said, and a number of times I've talked to different aldermen and candidates and people that have held the office that you're about to take in a little bit, is that you may be an alderman for Ward 7 or Ward 6 or Ward 2, whatever, it doesn't matter. But you're also a representative and an alderman for the entire city to a degree. Okay. So, yes, you've got that aldermanic courtesy and all that kind of garbage, but realistically, I mean, we all have to live together in this one little, 6 square miles, 8 square miles with 40,000 people. Yeah. And we need to get along. And so Rob is going to need to really advocate for city dock. That's not a Ward 1 issue. That's an entire city issue.
I learned and I grew a lot around the point you're making when I was an alderman, and these new council members will, I think, find their own way. And it's, I represented Ward 5 and so city dock, you could say wasn't a Ward 5 issue, but it really is, because Ward 5 residents go downtown, or they want to go downtown if they can find parking and understand the parking apps and all that. To the extent that it gets ward specific, I would say tends to be about building and change within that ward. And so Ward 8 tends to be very protective of, if you're going to affect the maritime zones, for instance, there's only one ward that has maritime zones. And so the Ward 8 alderman would get his backup if you were proposing, as a non-Ward 8 person, a change to that without consulting that alderman.
That makes sense. One of the things you've also said is that you want to reinstate the faith of the citizenry in government, which sort of leads to the point that right now there is a lack of faith in government. Where do you think that the prior administrations, plural, have fallen behind in that, have fallen down on that?
It's a great question, and I think it's complicated, so it's going to be hard to answer in a short podcast answer.
So you've learned this politician thing really well.
Well, this is reality. So I'm going to try to give you an answer, but it's going to be an incomplete answer. In any organization, and whether it's government, nonprofits, for-profit corporations, if you talk to employees, the number one issue that most people say is lack of communication. And there's obviously a ton of communication, it's just not sufficient. So when we talk about the needs of the community and wanting to be trustworthy, I think how prior administrations could have done better, and how I intend to be better is when we roll out a new proposal, that we'll try to be more clear about the opportunities that the public has to comment, what the whole process looks like, so that they could see if this is I'll make up timeframes. If this is a 6-month process, citizens will have this, and this, 3 opportunities, maybe month in and further down. Because I think people feel like if they miss a certain meeting, if they're not staying informed and they miss one thing, that their chance to have a comment and to be a participant is lost. And so we need to try to make it really helpful for people who care about issues to follow what's going on, get information, and know when they have an opportunity to participate.
I've always joked that you have a contentious issue that comes in front of the council, and you have a room full of 300 people that are looking up at you, at the 9 people up there on the dais, saying, this idea sucks. And a lot of the people hear from the council going, well, we've got 40,000 people that live here. 300 were against it. That means we've got, 39,000, 700 that obviously supported or don't have an opinion, which obviously is not true, but it sort of gives an air. But how do you get the people to care about this stuff? I could go on Facebook today and say, what do you think about the construction on City Dock? And there's going to be a dozen people going, well, what are they doing?
Right. And you can't say the city hasn't been communicative about City Dock in that example.
Well, the media, everybody. This is, how do you get people engaged to be aware?
So one of the things I hope to work at getting better at is taking the message to where people are. And I mean physically. So I talk about having town hall meetings in the 8 wards every year. Ideally, I'd like to do at least 2 town halls, one focused on the budget, one focused on other things. I anticipate doing neighborhood walkthroughs. So if we start to hear a lot of complaints about a particular neighborhood, not about being underserved, Clay Street comes to mind, where people come in and say, Clay Street's neglected, no one cares. Well, I'd like to resume these neighborhood walkthroughs where I'm going down with the state police chief, the head of public works, letting the residents know I'll be there in advance. The faith leaders know I'll be there in advance. And we'll literally walk down Clay Street together, where people could point out, see this electrical pole in the middle of the sidewalk. This is a real burden because our kids are trying to get to school in the morning and they can't get their stroller past this. And so hopefully they will feel heard, and it will be more personal. It won't just be that director. It'll be Chris was down on the street with me.
That's laudable. And I think that a lot of that is just being there and showing up. To a large degree. I've often thought that, if I were mayor, first of all, somebody needed to shoot me that I would have that thought. But secondly, that, if there was any kind of a shooting where somebody's life was in danger, or a fire where people are displaced or something like that. And I realize that there's enough crime in the city that you can't go out for every little thing. But, my instruction to the police chief would be like, if I'm awake, you come get me. If I'm asleep, you come get me. Mm-hmm. If I'm, drunk on the piano bar at Middleton's, you come get me. Mm-hmm. And it's not for a photo op. It's there to be there for the residents, our neighbors, our greater extended family.
Right.
Just to say, hey, we're here, which really extends into what you're just saying about these neighborhood walkthroughs, saying, hey, we're here for you.
I think that's right. And to your point, I don't think Gavin got enough credit, for instance, when there was flooding at 3 a.m. He'd go down there himself because he wanted to see what the situation is and work with the director of Office of Emergency Management. The reality is the one mayor, who's only one person, can't be everywhere that people want him or her to be. But I'm absolutely doing my best to be as many places as I can to be there and get comfortable relationships. A lot of this work is about relationship building and trust building. And so if people see me around, they are comfortable saying hello and sharing information.
By the end of your term, we're going to have AI will be taking over the world. We'll just build another Jared and send him out whenever we need to. We need to be there. But you've talked about the flooding and Gavin being out there in the middle of the night just to see what's happening and stuff like that. And the City Dock is a big issue. And for those that don't know what City Dock is, it's a big issue. Go,
right.
just Google Annapolis City Dock and enjoy reading the next 3 months of what you've got there. But they recently broke ground on that, even though it had already been broken a while ago. And Mayor Buckley had said that we're waiting for the federal agencies to sign off on the key FEMA grant. Senator Van Hollen says, we're still working on the major FEMA grants, and we're going to make sure that we continue to persist in that effort. I guess it's suffice to say that we don't know at this point what's happening. But what does the City Dock project, right now under Mayor Buckley, it looks like we're going to raise the dock, we're going to make a park out of it, we're going to have splash fountains and a little sort of an amphitheater-ish kind of a thing, benches and maybe some swings and stuff like that, and a maritime welcome center down on the corner of the dock. What does the City Dock project look at under a Littmann administration should that money, that $34 million from FEMA, not materialize? 33
million, but the point's the same.
Okay.
And to help clarify, as of we're recording this, my last information is that the city FEMA grant has made it through all of the hurdles. We've gotten all the approvals. It just needs the sign off of one individual. And obviously we don't know the result of that. So your point's the same, but we've gone through all the processes. So the process is complete, just needs to sign off. My number one focus on that project is the resilience aspect. And so regardless of whether we get the FEMA grant or not, the city does have most of the money needed for the project, with that huge exception of I'm not trying to minimize in any way the FEMA grant. Without that grant, we still need to do the resilience aspect of it. My goal would be to not have any lengthy pause or rethinking of that project, because I think any pause or any rethinking of the project, massive reengineering, you're talking about years of setback, because you then would have to reapply and get approvals from everything that you would need that they got already. So my effort would be to put it, to focus on the resilience aspects. The non-resilience aspects, if we don't have that money, I would be looking to either pause or delay or potentially eliminate aspects like the splash park as being superfluous, and that could wait for a day where we do get a FEMA grant.
Is it fair to say that going into office, you're going to have a must-have, be nice to have, or we really need to think about it?
Absolutely.
Kind of list?
Yeah, and it won't be just about City Dock. There's a train of thought of management that I subscribe to where you want to identify priority items in terms of how important is this versus not important, and compare that to how expensive versus not expensive. And when you have, if you think of that as a 4-box matrix, the things that fall into high priority, low cost, that's obviously what you want to get done first. The things that are lower priority and huge cost are last, and then you fill.
Takes a lot of thought.
Yeah, and you fill in the gaps, and the two in between, less expensive and lower priority.
I want to talk about the budget a little bit, and I know this will be because I know you're like a number cruncher kind of a guy.
Numbers are important.
But when Mayor Panelides, his last budget was $106 million. Mayor Buckley's latest budget is $204 million. And I know that you pushed back on that, saying that was not an that 84%, I think that was what the calculation was not accurate. Explain how that's not accurate. I mean, the budget is the budget.
Yeah. The budget is the budget, but so a budget, think of it this way. A budget is a plan. That doesn't meaning that a budget is not what you actually spent. A budget is what you plan to spend. And it's what you're going to recognize as planned spending. So in the last budget that you mentioned from Panelides' term, I think it was $108 million, but your point's the same, which is, I think, a smidge off. That budget did not recognize certain spending that was happening, meaning that they spent the money, they just didn't recognize it in the budget. For instance, grants. The city issues a lot of grants. It funds a lot of programs through grants. Those grants were not in the budget. Another example, certain things were in the budget but not sufficiently funded, or that expense wasn't sufficiently recognized in the budget. As an example, the police and fire fuel expense. No one is going to tell the police and fire, sorry, you hit your budget limit on fuel for the year. You can't fill up the trucks anymore. So they routinely spent more on fuel than was recognized in the budget. So that's under budgeting. And the third one, which is really should have sent off alarm bells. And we only saw this after the fact when Gavin's administration came in and brought in a different team to recognize this, is the prior administration used funds that were fees paid to the water and sewer fund and used that for paying taxable expenses. So when Gavin's team cleaned that up and said, wow, the prior administration has been using this water and sewer money improperly for general funds that are supported by taxpayers. Let's stop doing that. They had a huge hole in the budget to fill, and that's when they raised taxes by just under 10 cents. Half of that 10 cents was just to fill the hole from the water and sewer borrowing money. So let me just finish the thought, because I see you want to jump in. Let me just finish the thought. So when you account from all those things that weren't in the budget, underfunded, or were taken from the wrong account, that's tens of millions of dollars. There's another huge gap that people don't recognize. In the current way that Gavin's team has been doing budgeting, they transparently allocate money twice. And so, for example, to spend money, they have to allocate the money. It comes in under the general taxes, and then when there's a transfer to one of the other funds to support activities, they do a separate allocation. It gets counted twice, and they do a reconcile when they do the publication of the budget, and it's around $20 million. It's pretty significant of spending that's actually being caught twice. And so when you look at that $202 million budget, something like $20 million of it is actually not being spent. It's just two allocations and being reconciled down. Let me just do the flip side of it, because I started with budgeting is not spending. Spending is what people should care about, because that's actually the cash going out the door. And the spending increase during Gavin's term did not increase from 108 million to 202.
84%.
The spending increased by 3.5% on average during his first 6 years. And I say first 6 years because those are the only years that we have audited reports for.
Okay.
We won't have the audit report for 2024 until this just next month. Right. And then, of course, the current year won't get audited until next December.
And for those that aren't aware, I mean, when you talked about the sewer and the water and stuff like that, that's what they call enterprise funds.
Correct.
And in a perfect world, they are supposed to be self-sustaining.
Exactly.
The fees that you pay for that are supposed to pay for the maintenance, the building, any mortgages, the salaries, the delivery, everything else on all of those. So, and that's, if the city were to, I mean, literally, you could sell it off, I guess, if it's self-sustaining and let it do that. So,
as proof for what I just said being true, in the same 6 years that we're talking about spending, the increase in water and sewer in this period of great inflation during COVID, when everything starts to cost more, those expenses went up a total in those 6 years by 2%, not annually.
Okay.
But because they were able to replenish all the money and stop taking the money out of those funds, and so they had a lot more revenue, they didn't need to continue raising fees to pay for those systems.
Gotcha. Another thing, every administration seems, from Cohen on, and I think this is just the way politics works. Okay, we need to come into office. Now we discover, and it was like, oh, well, look what he did. Look what she did. And I know with the budget, I mean, Cohen bashed Ellen Moyer, said, I think his thing was a fiscal train wreck was the term that Josh used when he went in there. And certainly when Panelides came in, he said, oh my gosh, look at this mess Cohen left us here. And, when Gavin came in, it was like, oh my gosh, look at the mess that Panelides left here. Yeah. When Littmann comes in, are we going to get this? Because every one of those mayors has changed the way we've done budget, which essentially to me seems like it's shuffling that deck of cards. Mm-hmm. It's like, yes, we know 1 + 1 is 2, but now we're doing, 0.5 plus 0.75 plus 0.25 plus, and we're confusing it. Are you going to stick with the same budget type process that?
No, yes and no. So first of all, I'll defend each of the three people, including Panelides, in that when Josh came in, he came in after a period of a lot of spending on capital assets, Pitt Memorial Rec Center and there are other places. And then we hit a huge recession. Property values went down. The city's main revenue is property taxes. And so it did have a train wreck, whether fairly or not against Ellen Moyer. The situation changed because we're now in a recession. Property values came down, so revenues came down. And I will defend Panelides in that when he came in, the prior administration had just finished union negotiations that significantly raised employee pay through union negotiations that Mike Panelides couldn't control because he inherited the signed contract.
Is salary, I mean, like in a typical business, salary can be Ace Hardware. Salary is your largest expense.
Well, for me, because we're a retail, we sell goods, so goods is still a largest expense. But after goods, it's people. Okay,
is that the same thing in the city?
No, so it's completely flipped because in the city you don't have goods as the main expense. The main expense for the city government is people.
Okay, that's what I was getting at. So by people.
Far, I mean, even more than the numbers indicate. And what I mean by that is you certainly have staff, and that's something like 80% expenses. But if you're saying the next biggest expense is things like repaving the streets, well, repaving the streets is a very personal delivered expense. And so that's what I mean. It's even more than it looks like, because it's not directly personnel, but it's the expense behind the activity.
Gotcha. We'll talk about HACA a little bit. Okay, we've got a...
Let me just finish. You asked the last question about if I'm going to do it differently. So I am going to be working on more performance-based budgeting. And it's something that's been tried before unsuccessfully. The goal there is to have a budget based on the outcomes that you're trying to seek. So if you're trying to get to a certain result, that result is what your budget should be supporting. And if you can't achieve it, then let's stop pretending that we're going to achieve that result. And so it's different outcomes based, but
that's going to be on a department by department basis.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's improving the performance metrics that we're holding ourselves to. Instead of a vague, we want to be better at this. As a hardware store guy, numbers guy, I like to define what better means. I don't want to say we're going to be better at this. I want to say, what's the metric? What's the goal to increase? Are we improving by 5%? How are we measuring our improvement? And that's the desired outcome.
It's also got to hold your department heads a lot more accountable.
Yeah, exactly. It's a way where the public should be holding me more accountable, and I'm holding my department heads more accountable. And the very important part of that is that when we go to the next budget, we have a very strong look back and say, we budgeted X amount of money to get Y result. Were we successful? And if we were not successful, let's not just spend X again on that money. Maybe I confused my variables. I think it was Y.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever it was.
No, I get it. I mean, that's just, that's sort of like, saying the same thing, doing the same thing time and time again.
Expecting a different result. Right. And so that's the goal. That's the main reason. It's not to say that any of us are terrible if we don't meet our goals. It's just to have a clear view of we're not good at this. Stop doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
Right. I know as you come in, I mean, it's to be expected that within the mayor's office, there's going to be significant change as far as personnel. I mean, you want to bring in your people and everything else. And I mean, it's sort of the nature of the business when the old administration goes into hibernation for 4 years, see if they come out the next 4 years. Are you looking at changes in other departments citywide? I mean, we've got, we have like 12 departments, I think, that are something about that.
Yeah, so it's something like that. So off the bat, I'm going to be starting a national search for a city manager in early January. That right now we have, you would know, John, that we have 2 essentially deputy city manager positions. And one of those deputies, Vicky, is the acting city manager right now. And so that deputy position essentially is vacant. And so I intend to do a national search and to see the applicants, whether our existing acting city manager or the other deputy city manager apply or other people in city government apply. We'll see. And hopefully we'll draw a wide range of interest. I think I think it's a very lucrative job in the sense of appealing job. It's a great place to live. It's a great city to run. I suspect we'll get a lot of great applicants. And so I'm excited for that process.
I think also the fact that they're coming in year one. Okay, this is essentially, I mean, no, it's approved by the council, but I mean, it's an appointed job.
Yes.
At the pleasure of the mayor per se.
Yes.
And I just think in any political situation, it's got to be very difficult. I mean, if the county chief of police decided to walk off the job today, I mean, how many police chiefs are going to give up whatever they're in
for 1 year?
To come in for potentially 1 year.
Right. So I think this is a great opportunity to recruit for that kind of position. I'm aware, I don't know if it's public yet, so I won't tell you the position, but another director level position intends to retire. And once that is official and announced, we'll do an open search for that position as well. As far as other director and chief positions, I'm about to begin, literally as of Monday, we have a series of interviews with all of the directors and chiefs, senior leaders over the next week and a half. That's why I've been so hard to schedule over the next week and a half. And I'll have a much better view in a week and a half. So that's Thanksgiving when we're wrapping up those conversations of where we stand. And that's not necessarily going to be the end of that evaluation period. The reason we're doing that now as mayor-elect is so that once I'm sworn in on December 1st, we're going to be having a real robust engagement with city employees and continue to learn about the needs, the issues, and the solutions that city employees have. And so I suspect that through that process, it'll become obvious of who, where we have mutual respect and collaboration and shared interests and values that we can move forward together, or maybe it'll highlight some some areas where maybe we don't have alignment and we need to make some changes.
Fair. I want to talk about HACA for a little bit. Okay, we were looking at a potential $100 million lawsuit. I think that's it. Now you're going to give me this. Oh, it's my $92 million.
No, I don't have any correction like that. We have no idea what the value of that lawsuit is. Is the only thing I was going to say.
I mean, we're looking at a significant lawsuit.
100% agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we don't know where that's going to go. I mean, it's, if you go to fight a traffic ticket, you don't know what side of the court you're going to come out on.
Agree.
On the end of that.
No qualifications. We agree.
HACA was set up as a private entity separate from the city. The city appointed most of the board and funded by HUD and rent and, other things. So it's sort of to be their own little sort of enterprise fund, if you will. But HUD has sort of pulled out of this on the federal level and has sort of left them floundering there, which is really horrible for our neighbors that live in these communities. The city has stepped up to a large degree in certain things. I know under Mayor Panelides, he reinstituted some inspections that were halted and went back and forth. They've had some problems with the new construction and everything else, and the city has stepped forward. And private entities have. I mean, I know Atlas Restaurant Group came in and opened up their swimming pool a couple of years ago because they didn't have the money to do it. Now we're looking at this mixed use and mixed housing type, the Choice Neighborhood Initiative, to sort of combine Eastport Terrace and Harbor House and expand that back over toward the old Public Works facility on Spa Road. I had heard the estimated cost on something like that is $400 million. Is our support of HACA sustainable?
So a lot of issues in there. I'm going to try to unpack that. Let me know if I miss anything. So first of all, the HACA entity, I don't think the city can just have a complete hands-off approach because the city appoints 100% of their board members, and those board members who the city appoints hires the executive director. And these residents are city residents. And so I don't think we can have a complete hands-off. Now, what legal obligations are there for funding? That's more of what you were talking about, I think, where the city isn't required to provide additional funding. In many housing authorities around the country, the local jurisdiction is a major player in funding. It does
in the county.
Yeah, and elsewhere as well. So it would not be unusual if the city helped provide some funding for the housing authority compared to other housing authorities. You're absolutely correct. One of my nightmare scenarios that concerns me going forward is the role that HUD plays in HACA. They've already shared with HACA that they should expect reduced funding, inconsistent funding, delayed funding. It's a huge concern. The amount of money, wrap your head around this number, $850,000 per month that HUD sends through HACA to the voucher program. So this isn't even talking about the money they give for the public housing itself. This is for residents that have
rental assistance.
Rental assistance, potentially getting less or no rental assistance.
$1 million a month.
Almost. Yeah, rounding up. Yeah. It's obviously a huge impact that the city can't replace. The state can't replace. We rely on the federal government for that. So the nightmare scenario is that all these private landlords and management companies kick out those residents for failure to pay rent because they're not getting the voucher piece. And then we have this huge influx potentially of a housing crisis and homeless crisis. To me, that's part of the nightmare scenario, along with not getting the FEMA money and losing that lawsuit. Could create a disaster for our finances. And to your earlier point about inheriting a disaster, those three things are the potential inheriting a disaster.
So what's keeping you up at night?
Not yet. Yeah. I'm exhausted by the time I go to bed. So, the things that keep me up at night are when people's lives are impacted, when we have shootings and things like that in the middle of the night.
Let's talk about crime a little bit. I know on paper, crime is down a little bit. And I think a lot of it is that, social media and just, neighborhood kvetching, we know a lot more than we did 10 years ago when it happens. There was a shooting because the Ring doorbell picks it up or somebody goes down and everything like that.
Right.
I know that the Annapolis Police Department has not reported some crimes. Now, they have reported the legally required stuff to the FBI and stuff like that, but proactively letting the community know about crimes. I know that I know for a fact that they have underreported some of those. I mean, there was an assault on Chesapeake Avenue. It was never reported, but the next month they did their TV show and they were crowing about how great their police work was to arrest the guy that beat up the woman on Chesapeake Avenue. And it was like, oh, well, we never heard about that.
Yeah.
I know two people that have.
John, I'm a regular listener of your daily podcast, and I frankly have the same concerns when you articulate them of why didn't we know about this? And so I come into this with that same private citizen concern of I want our police department to be transparent. I want the public to be informed if possible. Now, in this role as mayor, I like to hear other sides of issues before I reach a conclusion. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to better understand what's the reasoning behind, is it error? Is it mistake? Is it intentional? Is it to protect identity, protect an investigation? I don't know the answer.
Well, that's, again, similarly, I had almost a knockdown drag out with the city at one point when I was last year talking about sexual assaults. Mm-hmm. And those, by policy in this current department, are not reported. Mm-hmm. I was like, this, I think, is a danger. Mm-hmm. I think that, the reasoning I got was that you don't want to drag a victim through it again. Yeah. My counter to that is that I'm not looking for details. Right. I'm looking that an incident happened and it happened here. Yeah. Because there are some sections of the town that are perhaps, we'll say, not particularly safe at night. And if I were owning a short-term rental in one of those places or adjacent to one of those places, and it was, hey, it's a quick walk to here and there and da-da-da-da-da, I would feel horrible if a visitor to the town, based on that marketing of my short-term rental, cruised through and ended up getting, robbed or, beaten up or anything like that. And that's where my position is coming out onto that, is to be proactive about it and sit there and say that. I think the county does a fairly good job. And I get that there's investigations. I mean, some guy came out and shot down the middle of the street. We can say that there were shots fired and just leave it at that. And let the investigation work. But I think that
I share the same underlying concern, and I give space to wanting to hear the other side, but I'm not going to fight you on that point.
Cool. Well, also the other thing, a question I have is we have our OEM department is very good, very qualified. They work together with the police department, the fire department, public works, certainly in certain instances. And I imagine if the S hits the fan coming up the bay or whatever it is, I mean, it's probably getting in Parks and Recs and everybody else that's involved in that. It's a y'all come. Right. As an incoming mayor, do you think if there was we'll use that proverbial hurricane coming up the bay, or something where we needed to evacuate and then realize that the lower half of our peninsulas, our county, if we needed to evacuate the city, do you feel confident that in our OEM department to be able to coordinate that and get everybody out?
I'll answer it this way, and you'll probably just say I'm giving a political answer, but I'm giving you what I honestly believe. I believe that our OEM department is very professional and capable, as are our other emergency response departments. No one, including them, are going to say that they've addressed all risks and are capable of addressing all risks. Depending on the severity of any storm, I don't know how many governments exist that can guarantee and assure.
It goes back into the COVID too. I mean, we didn't know what we didn't know.
Yeah. And so I would say I believe, again, with obviously a lot to learn, I'm about to be learning a lot more, but based on experience and existing knowledge, I think our emergency response is very professional and capable of handling crises. Is it going to be perfect? Are they perfect? Sure, not. They're not. No one is. Right. We live on a peninsula. There are limits to our capability of getting people off the peninsula fast, no matter how good anybody is.
True.
Are there opportunities for improvement? Absolutely. When we talk about, I think in particular, we could talk about areas of improvement for special events and better coordination and better traffic flow. When those things are predictable, we know they're going to happen. And so we can absolutely be better than we're currently doing. So I just want to be careful that I'm not suggesting that it's perfect and they don't need improvement. There's opportunities for
There is a study in that retired studies cabinet down at City Hall about that probably just need to be revisited.
And I've read some of them in preparation of the job, and some of them seem obvious as good workable solutions. So again, I want to hear the other side.
Find out why it's not.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
It's fair. You mentioned parking a couple times about people going downtown and figuring out how to park and everything else. And just to really sort of dumb this down a little bit is that we've got a fantastic new garage, which is over capacity. So it more than makes up for any kind of parking that we've lost on City Dock. So if everyone says, oh my God, City Dock, we're losing parking. No, we're not. It's in the garage. There's more than enough parking in the garage. And I've never seen it complete. I did see it once completely full, but there's usually spots in the garage.
Yeah. On a very busy Saturday, I've seen it as well, where it's at capacity.
Yeah.
But it's rare.
But the garage is a wonderful garage. The system getting into and out of it needs some work here. And
agreed.
To build City Dock, the city entered into a public-private partnership. Essentially, they built a garage for free. Mm-hmm. They gave the city $25 million to go to City Dock. And in return, they had control of that garage for 30 years. Cost overruns.
In 2 districts.
But cost overruns and through COVID and stuff like that, they needed more money. And we traded out more parking districts downtown. So they've got street parking essentially in the historic district. And right now we've got, 2 different apps. I mean, I was in Hill 3. Okay, right. Premium Park
and
Mobile.
Metropolis.
And Metropolis. I was in Hillman Garage, or the Mills Hillman Garage this weekend. Looked at the sign, went and looked for the code, put the code in my Park Mobile app, and it says, oh, it's not here, and couldn't park. So I preemptively sent them an email saying, look, if you're looking to send me a letter, I said, just make sure you schedule your person to be at court, because I've got all the time in the world. I want to fight this one. And they just pretty much said, good luck. Use this app. But so it is very confusing, and it is very confusing to some senior people, just visitors that come in. What do we do? How do we do? I mean, you see people scratching their heads and everything else. Is there any way that the city, do you see, and put on your lawyer hat for this? Because, are we just stuck into a 30-year agreement with the AMRP as long as they hold up their end of the bargain, or do we have any way to do anything other than politely say, could you pretty please do this for me?
So first, let me acknowledge and agree with you that it is not ideal right now.
Although I will say that Gotts and Knighton and even Park Place are beautiful.
They are beautiful. It's gotten a lot easier. It's still not, frankly, even in those garages, it's not as simple as I'd like to see it, where you have to carry around as a resident, you're resident as well. You have to have a printed QR code that you really need in advance because you got to print it. Otherwise, you can't scan it with your phone. So I'd like to have it better. But I joke about having had the talk with my son, who's 16 and a half and driving now, where I had to sit down with him and go over 20 minutes. Here's the 3 apps you need. Here's the 2 discount codes. Here's the process. And he and I are both tech savvy, and it still is he's like, really? I need 3 apps? I can't, why isn't this simple? No wonder people complain. But to your point of, are we stuck with this? I know that the existing council has been working hard to show improvements, and I'm going to pick up that work as well to get even further improvements. It's a contract. And as a lawyer, as you pointed out, every contract is always subject to renegotiation and to to high-level scrutiny to see if there's opportunities where both parties might not be meeting their obligations. But even if they are meeting all those obligations, you can always renegotiate. It's just about money. How much money do you want to put at it to buy them out or renegotiate something that's more favorable and customer-friendly?
Right. Well, it is very unfriendly customer-wise.
Exactly.
And that's something that needs to be resolved. I'll tell you, and I want to tell you a story about a Southeast Florida town. And I've told every mayor, and even though you're not the mayor quite yet, this story, but I was down there and it's just south of Tampa. And I parked and overstayed my welcome and got back to my car, and there was a ticket on there. And I'll paraphrase it, but it said, oh man, you overstayed your welcome. It sucks. It's going to cost you $50. And he flipped it over and said, but you know what? If you spend $50 in our local businesses and send in receipts within X number of days, we'll waive it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is brilliant.
Yep.
I mean, the message it says is, okay, we're dead serious on parking. Right. I mean, they ticketed me like 3 minutes after it expired. Okay. So they were on the ball. And then they turn around, they say, but we realize people make mistakes. Let's do it. I don't know how they tracked which one it was. I mean, it was a rental car at the time, but it was, but it was nice. I mean, now who's not going to go get a burger and a beer?
Right. I don't know if you remember, but at the end of my aldermanic term, I introduced something similar, except it was if you donated food, it was during Thanksgiving. And it was a way out of your parking ticket if you
I don't remember that.
had made a donation, they would waive your ticket.
That's awesome. I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah, it was at the end, and I know that lasted more than the one Thanksgiving. But to your point, it's a way of turning something that could be a real frustration into some side of, good deed.
One of the greatest stories I remember is Steve Samaras had told me that they were, they used to, when they had the meters on the street, they would send somebody out in the summertime and feed the meters on the expired ones. And one time this guy comes in, it's just irritating guy from Jersey or something like that. Hey, who touched my car? And of course, they're all pointing to Steve. And he's like, well, I wasn't really me, because they put a little card on there. And he says, we just do this. And he says, that's great. Nobody would do that for me up in Jersey. What do you got?
Right.
And, ended up making a purchase. And it was like the best $10 you ever spent for send somebody up and down the street there.
People appreciate goodwill. No one likes to be ripped off, whether you're wealthy or low income. Everyone appreciates a good deal, and no one feels like they want to get nickel and dimed like that.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk, the STR issue, short-term rental issue, is big, deep, and complex.
Yes.
And we don't have that much time for that. So really simply, okay, all of a sudden you have been elected mayor and they quick do a change of the city code, and you now have the 5 votes personally on the council to make anything happen that you want.
Yeah.
What do you immediately do for the short-term rental issue at this point? I mean, is it a moratorium? Is it the block restrictions? Is it an outright ban?
I wouldn't do an outright ban. I do think that short-term rentals have a place in our community, and so I would not try to do an outright ban. I do think we have way too many short-term rentals, and we have way too many unlicensed short-term rentals. So I am looking for strict enforcement of requiring licenses for people operating that business for lots of reasons, including safety and the lack of fairness for those entities who would get a license and follow all those rules. I would have a cap of the total number of short-term rentals. I would have a cap on the density of short-term rentals. In other words, even if you only have 10 short-term rentals in the whole city, if they're all on 1 or 2 streets, you're going to feel like there's too many on your 1 or 2 streets. And so those are my 3 areas of concern of strict enforcement, effective enforcement, reducing the quantity, reducing the density. And that's why I'm an advocate for having an initial moratorium until we can make sure that we're addressing those 3 things.
Okay. When you were on the council...
and let me just highlight before we move on. I do distinguish between owner-occupied and non-owner-occupied, whereas I think there's a lot fewer issues with owner-occupied, and you're supporting residents earning extra money, as opposed to the non-owner-occupied. You're also... It's less...
that's an investment property.
Yeah, but it's also reducing the housing stock, and that's a major concern of mine.
Right. When you were on the council, you and Alderman Savage were the tree huggers.
I wasn't. Rob and I never overlapped.
No?
Nope.
Okay, well, then you were the tree hugger when you were on the
I was.
on the council and took over by Rob Savage. But aside from City Dock, okay, which is obviously a huge environmental and resilience thing there, what are your thoughts on resilience and environment in the city of Annapolis outside of City Dock?
Yeah, so obviously it's a huge issue to me. You know that. I'm on the Resilience Authority. I owe them a letter of resignation as soon as I get a chance to write it.
Quitter.
And I also finally got to serve on the trial board for the Police Accountability Board yesterday. It was my first trial on the Police Accountability Board, so I have to send them my letter of resignation as well. Anyway, to answer your question, resilience is a whole lot more than City Dock. We absolutely have many other communities that say, and fairly say, we don't have trees in our neighborhood. How come people talk about trees are so important in other neighborhoods? Why aren't they important here? Stormwater is a huge issue. And stormwater is a very separate issue than rising seas. Stormwater is the ability to, when we have rain, to keep your roads and your backyards from flooding. And that's a huge issue. And so that needs to get further addressed. And that's part of our resilience because we're getting more violent storms more often. So we need to control that. And there's opportunities, by the way, to work with the Resilience Authority to better use our resources between this county and the city to not merge those services, but to have that collaboration with the county because they do a very good job with stormwater control in the county. With Eric Michelson, I'll give him the shout out. we want to make sure people have access to green spaces and parks. And so that's all part of, I think, resilience and making sure we have a livable city.
We should put a dome. It's only what, 7 miles? You said 7 miles. Just a dome, man.
And if it's all solar panels, all that electricity, you're creating,
we get Jerry Jones from down Dallas come up, move up here, put a dome over that. It'll be fine.
Yeah,
when it's roll out the grass on the sunny days.
that is a solution. I'm not saying it's a good one. It is a solution, though.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but you are going to be in a matter of days the mayor of the capital city of the state of Maryland.
John, I'm really wrapping my head around that still. It's really quite an honor to have that position. I'm very serious about doing my very best to live up to the expectations that people have of me today. I know on day one, it's all pats and backs, and day two, it's what can you do for me today? What can you do for me now? But it's really exciting. I'm really excited to have this job. It is a true honor to have it. We have a complex community and with a lot of needs, and I honestly think that we can make improvement, and that's my mission.
It's funny you talked about you wrapping your head around that. When I was talking to County Executive Stuart Pittman, he had said that the night before the inauguration, he had his, before he had his police detail and all that kind of stuff, that Executive Protection Unit, he just drove around the county just going, wow. Mm-hmm. Although I think he was probably going, oh shit, too, but it was a little bit of both. But
I have been walking around the city. I just had a meeting at Chicken Ruth's, like you said. I met Bob earlier today, and I do walk around the city, not from a sense of ownership by any stretch, but a sense of responsibility and pride of our city. We are one of only 50 U.S. capital cities, and to me, that was wow. One of only 50 capital cities. And it's a huge honor. It's a huge obligation, huge sense of responsibility. I know it'll be difficult and challenging. And frankly, if it wasn't, it wouldn't have my interest. I'm here to work hard.
You are the steward for the next 4 years, perhaps the next 8 years. Beyond that, you're out.
Yep.
But that's, again, congratulations.
Thank you.
You mentioned we have a strange kind of a community, not strange, but just a very diverse community, a complex community. One of the things that I see the community is looking to do, and it's kind of important, but you are going to forgo your allegiance to the New York Yankees. Is that really going to happen?
No, I've never said anything like that.
Well, I think we might force you. Okay, we need a recall.
You mean the team that just produced another 3-time MVP winner?
Just had to give you a little bit of a hard time on the Yankees.
I will elevate my allegiance to the Navy and Navy sports, and so you can count on me being a supporter for Navy athletics. Yes,
but we're not going to be all in on the Orioles.
Well, Orioles still are in Annapolis. It's the Baltimore Orioles and the Washington Nationals.
Spoken like a true politician lawyer turned politician. We'll find the loophole.
My wife is a diehard Baltimore Orioles fan, so I will never insult the Orioles. I want them to do very well and to make the playoffs, and then lose to the Yankees in the playoffs.
All right, fair. Well, I'll tell you, I want to thank you so much for your time. We will see you again December 1st. 2:30 at Navy Marine Corps Memorial Stadium is the swearing in. Where is that going to be in the stadium? Do you know?
Yeah, so all those details will be announced very shortly. And so there'll be 2 separate events. There will be the swearing in ceremony, and then there'll be a reception. The reception is a ticketed event. We're trying to make it as low cost as possible. The ceremony swearing in will be a free event. And so I encourage the entire community to come out and be a part of it.
And both of those events are going to be at Navy Marine Corps Memorial Stadium?
That's correct.
Okay,
That's
cool.
Correct. But, and like I said, the details will be released very, very shortly.
Very cool. All kidding aside, though, I'll speak on behalf of the city of Annapolis. We're all wishing you the best for pulling for you for the next 4 years. It's going to be complex, as you realize. I think you're obviously more than capable to do that. And
Thank you.
We appreciate what you're going to be doing for the city. And we'll be back to ask what you can do for me.
Well, John, before you wrap up, I just want to say I appreciate that you keep yourself very well informed about these issues. Obviously, to do this interview, you know what you're talking about. And I think the media and press are such an important part of our society. And I know the media and journalists get it's not an easy career right now. And so I appreciate that you and others doing that hard work, stay involved. And I invite you to continue asking questions. And if there's something that I'm doing that doesn't make sense, I invite you to reach out. And even if you disagree with my reasoning, being able to at least have the conversation is important for the public.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care, John.
This has been a bonus podcast from Eye on Annapolis. Please visit us at eyeonannapolis.net. Follow us on Facebook at All Annapolis and on Twitter at Eye on Annapolis. And if you haven't subscribed to the Daily News Brief podcast, go for it. And all of your local news will be delivered to your phone, tablet, or smart device by 6 a.m. every Monday through Friday.